Okay, so let's get real for a second. Have you ever suggested a new plan, maybe at work or with friends, and just got hit with an instant no? Or, hey, maybe you're the one who feels that flash of irritation the second your routine gets messed with. Well, let's dive into this because what we usually just write off as stubbornness, it's actually a really sophisticated defense mechanism. In this explainer, we are going to unpack the real psychology behind why our brains have this knee-jerk reaction to resist change. So, here's our game plan. We'll start by taking apart that whole myth of stubbornness. Then, we'll get into three huge psychological reasons: the fight for control, the brain's deep, deep need for safety, and something I call the perfectionist's dilemma. And we'll wrap it all up by reframing this whole thing as a feature of our minds, not some kind of flaw. All right, first up, it is not just stubbornness. We're going to deconstruct that initial gut reaction we all have to push back when something new comes along. So why does that happen, right? I mean, why do we have this built-in reflex to shoot down a new idea, even when, logically, it could make things way better? It's a really fascinating question. And you know what? The answer goes way deeper than just personality. This slide right here really gets to the core of it. On the one hand, we have the common view, right? We label this behavior as being stubborn, defiant, or just plain difficult. But if you look at it through a psychological lens, the picture changes completely. It's not a character flaw. It's actually a complex and often totally unconscious defense mechanism that's designed to protect us. So that leads us to our first big reason, the fight for control. This is all about what happens when a simple suggestion lands like a direct command. The key term to know here is psychological reactance. It's a fancy name for a feeling we've all had. That immediate, defensive pushback when we feel like our freedom to choose is being squeezed or taken away. It's almost like this primal instinct to protect our own autonomy. And this quote just nails it. For so many of us, this isn't just a minor preference. It's a fundamental, core psychological need. That feeling of being in the driver's seat of our own lives, it's absolutely essential for our well-being. So here's how it all plays out. Someone makes an innocent suggestion, but our brain hears it as a direct order. The brain's immediate response? Pushback, hard, just to prove it's still independent. That phrase, you have to, it gets subconsciously translated into something like, oh yeah, watch me not do it. The key takeaway here is that the resistance is almost never about the new idea itself. It's about protecting the freedom to choose. Okay, next up, let's explore another incredibly powerful driver: the brain's need for safety. This explains why a predictable world can honestly feel like a non-negotiable part of our survival. For a lot of people, this is a learned behavior. I mean, think about it. If you grew up in an environment that felt unstable or stressful, your brain had to adapt. It learned very quickly that routine and predictability meant safety. So now, as an adult, any sudden change can trigger a genuine feeling of being under threat, like the rug is about to be pulled out from under you. And that's exactly why we need to reframe how we think about routine. It's not about being boring or stuck in a rut. For a brain that's wired for safety, these patterns are a powerful way to self-regulate. They help keep the nervous system calm. They stabilize our circadian rhythms. They basically prevent us from living in a constant state of high alert. But, there's another, much simpler reason that's also tied to safety: just pure cognitive exhaustion. Sometimes your brain resists change simply because it's already completely fried. Think of your brain's processing power like the battery on your phone. If you're someone whose mind is constantly buzzing, analyzing things, planning, replaying conversations, you're already using like 90% of your daily mental energy. So when a new change comes along, your brain doesn't see an opportunity, it sees another huge complex problem to solve, and it just doesn't have the juice for it. That no isn't defiance, it's a low battery warning. Okay, let's move on to our third theme, the perfectionist's dilemma. Now, this is for anyone out there who resists change because the risk of not being able to do it perfectly just feels way too high. The slide captures that internal conflict so well. For a perfectionist, the idea of jumping into a new process that might have flaws or, God forbid, produce merely average results, that feels incredibly risky. So kind of paradoxically, it actually feels safer to do nothing at all, to wait, to resist until the conditions are absolutely perfect. They aren't trying to be difficult, they just care so deeply about getting it right. And all of this brings us to our final section, which is really the most important takeaway of this whole explainer. This resistance we feel, it is a feature of your brain, not a flaw. So let's just bring it all together, shall we? We've seen that this resistance isn't just about being stubborn. It's this complex mix of powerful drivers, a fight for control to protect our autonomy, a deep-seated need for safety when our brain feels threatened or just plain overloaded, and that perfectionist's dilemma where the fear of not being perfect is just too much to handle. So here's the bottom line. If you recognize these patterns in yourself or maybe in someone you know, please remember that what you're seeing is a learned adaptation. It's a system the brain has carefully built over time, not to cause problems, but to protect its own peace and preserve its sense of self. And just understanding that is the first step toward working with your mind instead of constantly fighting against it. And that leaves us with one final thought. Now that you have this new way of understanding why a brain instinctively says no, how might that change the way you listen, both to other people and maybe, most importantly, to yourself?